So tomorrow will be Ilyas's trial, and considering what's gone on, which isn't my place to talk about, and I don't think Luna would be talking about it until after the trial for a variety of reasons, but there's stuff that's just not right that's gone on, and reading this today about Angelina made me feel even more concerned about it because it's just unreal to me. I'd only ever read that little part about Angelina and her mental health issues that they said she had and her absentee parents, and I just made an assumption that, she just had to go along for the trip with Dad, and I thought she was younger than that as well. I'd heard some different ages. So I just kind of had this image of my mind of a kid having to go along with their parent and not really being like such a participant in her behavior being, I didn't know what her behavior was, but it's totally not that of a person who's passively having to be there at all. It's quite different than that. And also that she was there for all four attacks and everything else. So it's really concerning what they did with her. And it's almost comical how ridiculous it is, some of the stuff in that document. So I was going to share that with you. So an awesome person from Luna's Patreon sent me a link to a website in the Netherlands that gives you court records. And she sent me specifically the link to the one about Angelina being acquitted. And so that's what this is right here. So basically, what they ended up doing with her was nothing. She was acquitted for the attempted murder charge, but found to be complicit in aggravated assault with premeditation and attempted arson. And then arson that actually happened besides attempted. And they dismissed all legal proceedings for non-attributability. She cray-cray, so she's not responsible for anything. And nothing was imposed because she's living in Germany, and they can't impose any special conditions of treatment for her, supposedly for institutionalization or therapy or whatever, which they recommended she get. So that's kind of where that went. But the verbiage within the document is just insane to me. So just even starting out here with the assessment of the evidence, they say here the public prosecutor considers three charges legally and convincingly proven with regard to count one, and that's the murder count. He is of the opinion that it cannot be concluded that there was a significant risk of death as a result of the actions of the defendant. Wow. So here's the thing. She's holding the acid bottle. She's aware of the attack. It's been premeditated, so she's there with the acid, which she hands to her dad. In this country, if you were there doing that, you are as guilty as anybody else there doing anything. Even just by knowing about it and being there with them, you are. You don't have to lay a finger on anyone. And they started doing that because people would do that kind of stuff. They'd be like, well, I was just there. I didn't do anything. And so they made being there being as if you were doing anything. So obviously that's not the case here. So because of that, she ended up being acquitted of the murder charge. And then aggravated first degree assault, she was convicted of. And then they bring up that they also set these fires on first the 12th of January. They attempted to do it, and then they completed it on the 18th of January. And she was completely part of all of that. And they make it clear that deliberate cooperation between the defendant and her co-defendant. And look at all that time span that went on, from May of 2022 to January of 2023, and you're that big of a kid, and you just saw, let's say you were there for the acid attack and you weren't acting the way she was, which we'll talk about in a minute. Let's say your dad made you go do that and you were so defective mentally that you didn't think you had a choice. And then you'd be pretty horrified if you were remotely normal. So the next thing you were going to go do to these people, you wouldn't be there for it. And you sure wouldn't be there for it twice. So to me, like, I wonder what these proceedings are like. Does anybody push back? I mean, what even goes on? Because I can't even believe some of this. But anyways, we'll go on with the rest of it. So here we have them talking about the attacks. One is the acid attack, and they intentionally and premeditatedly inflicted grievous bodily harm on someone. And then we have the first fire that they were too retarded to set on the 12th of January, 2023. That's a good thing they were. And here they are talking about the property, almost more than the people. And so it was an open flame with a piece of cloth in a wooden bottle of flammable liquid, basically a Molotov cocktail thrown into the house. And then on the 18th of January, they did it again. So her with another person, starting a fire, bringing open fire in contact with flammable liquid, and they weren't home or they would be dead. And that's what makes some of the rest of this really disgusting to me. So here we have them talking about this had been the only portion I'd seen prior, and it's about her mental health. And I had always been under the impression that she was, I'd heard different ages, so maybe 12 or 14. I'd heard those two ages, and 15, some people said, but I was also under the impression that she was there for the one thing and she only unwillingly, like had to be there, not so much of an active participant. But that's not the case. And I didn't know what her behavior was like either. And I also didn't know that she was present for all of the attacks and actively participating in all of them and laughing and smiling during the acid attack. So that really changes your view of things. And that she's 15, she's not 12 or 14. But this is her psych eval discussion here and to gain more insight into her personhood and her circumstances. And they're not really diagnosing her with anything. They're saying unspecified psychotrauma or stressor related disorder. So I don't know if that's something that like they can pull out the diagnostic manual and just use that as a blanket thing for kid with crappy parents who are traumatizing them all the time. I mean, I don't know what this is here. So, in addition, they speak of an endangered personality development. Okay, so, neglected and abused kids don't develop their personalities very well. Okay, these disorders were present at the time of the charges and influenced her behavioral choices. Okay, what disorders? Because unspecified psychotrauma. Well, haven't we all been traumatized just being on Earth? I mean, how far are you going to go with that? That's a pretty blanket term. It looks that way to me anyway. So they advise the charges should not be attributed to her. Hmm. In doing so, they consider she grew up from a young age in an unstable, unsafe home, and her mother is a piece of garbage, and they assume the defendant, due to insufficient attention and guidance, didn't get to know or regulate her emotions properly. So she didn't build up a positive image of herself. Reading that now and knowing what she did, I mean, my God, a positive image of herself. So, ha ha ha, acid is funny. I mean, really, she's much worse than this. This would be something you'd say about somebody who, like, cheated on their homework or something. Feelings were deflected and isolated. She finds it difficult to recognize feelings of herself and others. So she doesn't have the normal feelings of a normal human being like most criminals don't. During the investigation, it was seen that the defendant has difficulty guarding her own boundaries. Yeah, I think it's other people's boundaries that she has a problem understanding. Anyway, that she's dependent in circumstances. If they're stressful, she adapts. So, yeah, she goes along with whatever's going on around her, no matter how evil and cray cray. Got it. She needs all the energy she can get to keep herself going. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, have a Snickers before you go murder people. What? It is apparent from the documents before the court that her stepdad, with whom she lived, was able to put her under considerable pressure. Yeah. And because of her disorders, which you're not telling us what they are, she was completely hindered in her freedom of choice and suffered the events passively. So she just passively, he was like, we're going to the, Molotov cocktail event. We're going to the acid attack. Come on, we're going to the fire. I mean, at no point could she ever tell anybody anything or run away from home or do anything. Okay. The gravity of the situation did not dawn on her because, yeah, that would be something that maybe a 5-year-old watching a Tom and Jerry cartoon, the gravity of, what's going on violence-wise wouldn't dawn on you if you're watching a TV show. But she was there with a human being screaming, and she was laughing at it, that she was setting on fire. I mean, are you kidding me? Nor was she inhibited by her lack of conscience. Yeah, so she has no conscience. You're letting us know. Okay, great. She was unable to make other behavioral choices. So, your conclusion with somebody like this who has no conscience, adapts to whatever's going on around her and just starts doing it too. And they're not discussing that her behavior is really, she's got a ability to be sadistic if she's reacting to something like that way. And so it's a little worse than just adapting and passively going along with things. She's like sadistically getting off on what she's watching. So something's super wrong with her. And we're just going to send her on her way, as you'll see in a minute. But the court adopts the substantiated conclusion, follows their advice, and then nothing can be attributed to her at all. She's not punishable, and she's discharged from all legal proceedings. So here we get into them discussing her personhood, and she's never been picked up in the Netherlands, so that's just like, okay. In order to answer the question of whether a criminal measure should be imposed, they took into account the psychiatric report and their advice. And they said the risk of recidivism for her violent behavior would be moderate, as long as she's in healthy relationships and a sufficiently supportive, pedagogical, effective climate in which adults have sufficient insight into her functioning and monitor her. Okay, so she's never had that in her life, but supposedly if she does, you know that her risks are moderate. I don't know how you've decided that. And then they talk about her being inclined to react passively instead of aggressively. Yeah, when you're taken into custody and people are watching what you're doing and you're trying to get to where they'll let you go, you're not going to be jumping in their face, I'm sure. So if she re-enters a relationship with dominance and dependence, she won't be able to, keep that risk of violent behavior at bay. Okay, so you're indicating she's risky. The experts consider treatment of her psychopathy necessary to adjust her personality development and promote the most favorable development possible because we really want to make sure she develops properly. We're not too worried about that little boy in the house that if he'd been home, he'd be dead. We're very worried about the development of the almost adult who tried to kill him. Got it. So the experts expect that an outpatient treatment program will not have the desired effect for various reasons. Uh, let's see, long-term treatment in a closed setting is what they recommend. That's probably pretty accurate. She would need to be somewhere and really be worked on probably by now. They consider treatment within a civil law framework, like a secure youth care to be appropriate, uh, like in a PIJ, which is a like institutionalized type thing. But they end up by the end of this working it out to where they won't impose that on her. So that's really unreal too. But they think she should get intensive treatment in Germany because she doesn't speak the language in the Netherlands, and she wouldn't have like support of other human beings. Because we just want to make sure that she has everything she needs in life, you know. She's such a sweetheart. So treatment is possible, but there are long waiting lists to get in. So they don't really even know what kind of treatment she needs. So there's day treatment, there's all these different kinds of treatment options. Since the council has not been able to identify the treatment options in Germany, it's unable to give appropriate advice. So they're not going to impose any punishment or measure on the defendant. So after all that warbling, they're just going to send her back to Germany and say, this chick needs treatment, but they're not going to really recommend how you go about doing it or where or impose anything on her whatsoever. Wow. So here we get into the part about the injured party, or Luna and her son, and they claim to have suffered damage as a result of the defendant's actions. Well, duh. And so 7,500 for immaterial damages and 3,000 immaterial. That's such small potatoes for the lengthy medical procedures she'll have to have and other ways that affects your life and being made homeless. So the compensation also they were claiming should be increased by the statutory interest and the defendant ordered to pay. And there's no law for that. But that was all inadmissible because the little psycho was dismissed of all legal proceedings. No measure was imposed on her, so they can't impose compensation. So that's just another wonderfully insane thing. So this next part really shows you how they wormed their way out of compensating her, which it's just scary the way they can wheedle their way and use the law. This could have gone in either direction, but it went in the direction against her. So the representative noted that if no penalty or measure is imposed on the defendant, the injured party's claim should be declared inadmissible. But Article 361 of the Code of Criminal Procedure in Holland aims to strengthen the position of an injured party in criminal proceedings. So the defendant seems to benefit from a treatment process in Germany, but it's unclear whether a measure imposed in the Netherlands can be enforced there. There are cases in which the defendant has been acquitted of all legal proceedings, but in which a care authorization has been imposed. So that right there means they have precedent to do it. My understanding would be that. In that case, the injured party is admissible in his claim. So in that case, she would have a claim for damages, and she'd get the 7,500 and the 3,000 for them attempting to murder her and destroy her life. The authorized representative asked the court to draw some parallels with treatment processes in Germany and declare the injured party's claim admissible. And I think that would have been the right thing to do. So the court held as follows. The defendant was convicted of inflicting grievous bodily harm, the two arsons, but was acquitted of all legal proceedings because these acts could not be attributed to her. No penalty, measure, or care authorization will be imposed on her, nor will she be found guilty without the imposition of a penalty or measure. So, because of all that, Luna's claim was inadmissible. Wow. So that's just insane and doesn't make sense since it looks to me like what they presented as precedent to do otherwise was valid. And get this piece de resistance. The injured party had her inadmissible, claim for damages, but orders the injured party to pay the defendant's costs, so far estimated at nil. Wow. Yes, we're done bashing your head in, and we're done setting on fire. Now pay for my court costs. What the hell? So seeing what happened there, you can understand why there would be a lot of concern just based on that with how this would go with Ilyas. Like what he's being charged with and what kind of sentence is imposed means a lot for when and if the other two are caught. And hopefully it's just a matter of when with what they're going to do with them. And furthermore, another good thing will be that after this trial is over, there will be a press release and information also available online, names included, I'm sure. So that will be very, very helpful. And yeah, it's just really crazy to me. The lack of protection for victims, the absolute mismanagement of everything with regard to how they're handling, uh, apprehending these people, how they're handling prosecuting these people, and definitely people who are natives to the Netherlands, and were minding their own business and abused horribly by these people, almost murdered. They don't even want to call it murder. When you throw a Molotov cocktail in a window and the only reason people aren't dead is they weren't home, when you attack somebody with a club and break bones, attacking them in the head especially, and then you're pinning them down to pour something all over them that would make them go blind, trying to pour it in their eyes. She got away, so that might not have been all they were going to do. The fires indicate why wasn't anybody there arguing that too? That okay, you come back two more times to blow the place up. You probably were trying to kill them. The first incident was an actual attempted murder, really. And in this country, like I'd said before, somebody there that's 15 years old, unless they've got the mind of a baby or they're severely, nutty and they were in a state of psychosis when they did it, that they are not in anymore, lots of different things like that would have to play into it to say that they don't bear any culpability beyond just, oh, this poor child needs to go get therapy in Germany. I mean, what in the hell? It's beyond like incompetent Dr. Phil meets, Judge Judy retarded crap. But anyway, it becomes almost halfway funny. It's so bad, but it's not funny. So, anyways, that's my take on that. And hopefully this goes a lot better. Please show her your support because they're putting her through a lot for no good reason, and it's very sick. Bye bye.